So hello, Tiara, and welcome to the Business of Impact interview series. I'm super excited to speak with you. So the purpose of this series is really to highlight what it truly takes to run a nonprofit organization and what some of those roles actually look like within the organization. I've seen a ton of your content. On Instagram and Twitter specifically. And we speak pretty much the same language. So since so many people kind of equate nonprofits with grants, I thought that I absolutely had to speak with someone who was an expert in kind of like grant applications, writing grants, and all things of that nature. And so I had to interview you because I'm like, I love her content. And so please tell us, tell us who you are and what do you do in the nonprofit realm?
Yeah, so my name is Tiara Quiala. I like to call myself everyone's favorite grant writer and nonprofit educator. And so what I really do is I help nonprofit organizations increase their cash flow through grants. But my main thing that I love to do is help to just educate those in the nonprofit sector on best grant writing practices and grant readiness.
Nice. And so what do you love most about your work?
I would say I get to look into what everyone is doing. I was an AmeriCorps member for 2 years. So, that's like, we're the Peace Corps of the United States, so to speak. So we just do volunteering all over. So I've done volunteering all across Southern Illinois. And I love that because I got to be a part of everyone's mission in some way, whether it was just serving for 3 hours or I was a long-term 6 months or more type of volunteer. I get to see everyone's mission and incorporate myself into that. So I think that's the biggest thing that I love about my work is that I get to be a piece of everyone's passion and what it is that they do.
Nice. I think it seems like a running theme from everyone that I've spoken to, or even just people I come across who are in this space. It's kind of like you have a heart for service, or you used to be a volunteer or something of that nature, and it kind of like pulled you into the sector. But it's like, on the other hand, we know that it's special to work for nonprofit organizations, whether it's internal or as a consultant. So specifically in your role, because I feel like when I see people first start a nonprofit, it's like the first thing they ask for is like, where do I find grants? Where do I find grants? So what would you say is the greatest challenge in your role?
For my role specifically, I've helped other organizations write grants and, be a part of bigger missions and organizations, but I did not go out into my own until like the past year. And so what I have learned has been the biggest challenge is many people that contact me just are not in a position to seek grants. Grants are just that bigger, top tier, top dog thing. And it's not to say that you will never obtain them. It's just they are not going to be your first funding source. I personally, even volunteering and working in nonprofits and doing the work and being on both sides or multiple sides, I've never seen grants be the first funding source ever a day in my life, just for any nonprofit organization, just because there's no longevity there, there's no sustainability. And it is so hard to get that across because most nonprofits are like, I need the grant to be sustainable. And I'm like, you got to be sustainable to get the grant. And it's like,
it's so funny.
Oh my God.
It's so funny that you say that because literally I find that the first kind of like funding source that they look to is grants. So it's like hearing somebody who's well-versed in this topic say that it really should be the opposite is really eye-opening. And I hope people are listening. So would you say, because also we know that the pandemic kind of put a lot of people in a tough spot. So did you have more people trying to seek grants and funding that way due to the pandemic?
I did. I was sort of on both sides. So I had a few clients that were getting grants simply because they had been recipients for past years. I didn't even have anything to do. They were just like, hey, you're going to get this grant because you got it last year. I had some that were sustainable. They've been operating for years in the community. They were like, hey, put your name on this document. I'll give you this grant ASAP. I had a lot of that for COVID relief, but I also had a lot of organizations that had never been into grants, they did not have the foundation, I guess I should say. And so I saw a lot of that of people awarding it to, a longstanding organization, community, or people that they gave it to in past years, and not necessarily like, hey, you're new, let me give you something, which unfortunately you would hope that would happen more often, but I don't think that was something, at least for me personally, that I saw that happened too often.
No, I think you're definitely right. And you mentioned something about foundation, which I think is good to get into. So you talk a lot about the process that goes into applying and actually receiving grants. And then just now you mentioned foundation. So can you talk a little bit more about why it's important for nonprofits to think beyond like just applying and what that process actually looks like? Because I think we think application, but there's all of these things that you have to do before you get to like the application piece.
Yeah. So there are these things that have been, there's sort of a process to grants. So there's this thing called the 5 R's of grants. And so there's readiness, relationships, research, writing, and then reporting. And so that's, you can kind of just, say them however of the R's, but I tend to kind of put them in order. So first there's grant readiness, which means your organization is in a position to actually receive grants. That's something that I talk about a lot because so many organizations do not have that foundation with their own organization to actually start seeking grants. And then once you are in that position, next, let's move on to relationships. Are you building relationships within the community? A lot of my clients, literally with grant writers, our job is not to build your foundation. You're supposed to come to us with your foundation already set, like, hey, I got this bomb organization, fill out this application, submit it for me. That's to make it sound so simple. That is the gist of our job. So I have tons of clients who are like, yeah, I got a grant from them last year. Just take this application and apply. Yeah, we got grants from them 2 years ago. We've been connected for years. They have that longevity, that sustainability in the community. And I feel like that's something that many nonprofits don't really seek out because they're like, I need money. And once I get it, I need to hold it. It's mine. I'm just going to keep it for myself forever, endeavor. And it's like, grants are 1 year, baby. Then after that, what are we going to do? Just sit here and look crazy, right? Then there's actual writing. Congratulations. This is the part that you think that you're at of actually applying or researching that part and then writing. And then finally, let's say you win it. Congratulations. Now you have to actually continue to do more work. You have to report on it, maintain monthly reports, quarterly reports, annual reports, whatever it is that they are requiring you to have. It's a lifelong process.
I am so glad you said that. So I'm really vocal about like people not really understanding what it takes to keep a nonprofit running. And so before I get into the piece that comes with getting the grants, there was a tweet that you had, and I was like, I got to read it because we got to talk about it a little bit. So the tweet pretty much said was that can we normalize nonprofits being in a certain position to properly receive funding before asking for funding? And like, that was the one for me. So as someone who works like on the fiscal side of things, a pet peeve of mine is when organizations just go after funding without thinking about like requirements and capacity. And you just hit on that. So one of the things that I felt like I've had to educate a lot on was like, you go out and get this huge grant, but now we have monthly reporting, or we have monthly invoicing, like, or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, someone has to do that work. Like, it's not enough to just say like, hey, we got the money. And so I think sometimes it's like, sometimes organizations focus only on like, can I get the money? Can I get the money? But then it's like, you got the money, but what comes after that? And so it's like, when I saw that tweet, I was like, people don't think about like requirements and like capacity. Can you talk a little bit more about like what you were thinking or where that tweet came from?
Yeah, it is. So when I first started my business as a newbie business owner, as everyone, they always tell you, find your target audience, find who you're talking to. That's where the money is. You got to find the right person to hear the message so you can get the money, et cetera, all these things. And when I first started, I was talking to everybody who had a 501c3 status, who just had whatever. So when I first started out as a grant writer, I was getting all of these clients who just pay me whatever you can and we can just make it work. And it's not even about the money that they can provide or the dollar amount that came with it. It was like, okay, here's this grant that we found. So I'm going to need your determination letter. All right, I got that. So I need your financial statements. I don't have that. All righty, so I need your 990 forms. Okay, we have 990 EZ. Okay, do you have it? No, it's digital somewhere, so they didn't give it to you. It was a postcard. I have no idea where it is. Okay, so where's your board members? It's just me. I did have board members, but I fired them. All righty, so then do you have a budget? No, but I have an idea of, I think, and then it's this 6-figure budget. It's like, how much did you spend last year? $2,000. And I'm like, guys, like, it was difficult in my first 6 months. Even now, like, I am constantly figuring out who am I trying to target with these services, because a big majority just are not in a position for this type of funding. And it's not even that we think you're going to do bad with the money, we think you would do something crazy or one-off with the money. It's just that you're a team of one. Many times, like more often than not, you're a team of one. You can't spend a six-figure budget by yourself just on program supplies, and you don't even have a program director or all of those things.
Wow, hearing you talk, I'm like, I think our roles are definitely closely related. And like I talk a lot about like having a firm foundation overall is going to be inclusive of many areas, and your finances being one of those. And it's like, if you don't pay attention to that, when you're asking people for money, they want to know what you spent. They want to know what you've done with the money you've got in the past. They want to know, have you gotten any money in the past? And I think it's important you have to track those things. And like, so it's funny because I also kind of relate to you on that level. And I had a mentor actually tell me, she's like, not everyone is in a place where they're teaching like babies how to walk. Like you might be in this space where now you're working with a toddler, or you might be working with an adolescent, someone who's able to run. And so I think when you think about your role and what you're trying to do and who it best serve, a lot of times it is the more like established organizations, those who have staff, right? Those who have been funded in the past. But I think newer organizations can learn something about what it means to have a strong foundation and laying that foundation in the beginning, so they can build up to get to that place where they're able to go after grants and additional types of funding.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. And I just have to agree with everything that you said. And I think the sad part is that it, not on purpose, but this oftentimes tends to affect minority-led organizations the most, because we just don't have the resources in general. Then we're trying to get the money to get the resource. And it's just a never-ending cycle of there's never enough of anything, what it seems like for us. So I will say that is a trend that I saw kind of in COVID, that I did not see minority-led organizations that could use the assistance actually getting the assistance. It was more so the ones that were established, and rightfully so. They earned it. They are doing the work. They are doing it before they even got the money. So kudos to them. I have seen a few grants, maybe like one or two, where they're like, even if you're a smaller one, apply. But even then, it's the barest of foundation that they're requiring, and many just don't even have that.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's that whole discussion around even wanting to educate funders, because like people have to start somewhere, right? And so we have all of these corporations and bigger funders, pledging all of this money, right, in the height of racial injustice to Black or minority-led organizations. But it's like sometimes the criteria rules many of them out. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're saying you're going to give them this money, but when they go down the list, it's like they don't even qualify. And so I do think like just in our industry, I guess as a whole, like some things could stand to be, some rules can stand to be redone, rewritten, just because it just doesn't serve, it doesn't serve us. Yeah. So what's the number one thing that you wish people knew about your role in the grant writing process?
What exactly my role is as the grant writer?
So because you come in as a grant writer, is there any one thing that you wish organizations knew kind of like prior to you coming in, like that, let's say, makes your job much easier?
Right. I would say for those of y'all watching this, don't be hurt. I tend to be the one that hurt feelings. Don't be hurt. Just cry about it later. It's okay. I promise. Have your documentation in order. And that sounds so simple. Like most organizations should be able to do that, but I cannot tell you how many are just missing bare things. They don't have their W-9s. They don't have their 990 forms on time. They don't have any of these things. And then it's like, oh, I was supposed to file this and then I didn't, so now I have to file it again. Or, there are certain things that, we can kind of wait on that, or it can come as we need it, like audited financial statements. That's not always required. But at the minimum, they're going to need a list of your board of directors. They're going to want, or a roster. They're going to want to know their education, their background experience, why they're actually on your board, what purpose do they serve. They're going to want to know who your key staff are, what their roles are, what it is that they do. When it comes to grants, they want to know every single detail about your foundation. So having that all sort of compiled together and already ready would definitely streamline the process, because with many, I have to walk them through, okay, this is the program director. What do they do? Do they do this? I kind of have to like pull that out of them to help them develop it themselves.
So it's like, it's not something that they have already or that they're coming to the table with. No, that's definitely understand that. So my last question really revolves around, so I know like being on the fiscal function side, there are just certain things that I feel like if I had access to or was a part of would make my job easier, or I'd feel better supported in my role. Is there anything, because the hope is that like nonprofit leaders and board members would pay attention to these kind of conversations. Is there anything that you feel like organizations, let's say, that do bring you in can do to better support you in your role and in making your job easier?
I would also say something that I would say would be to know their programs as well as I do. Many times I either get clients that sort of know their programs. I have to like go back to them. So how many people did you serve this year? Okay, how many people did you serve last year? Okay, what were your evaluation measures? Like I have to keep going back and forth to like grab little things to put into this proposal. Mm-hmm. And I have some clients that they're like, okay, so I wrote out this 10-page thing about all of our programs. Here you go. And I'm like, look at God. Like you just gave me everything I needed. I can tweak and, revise as necessary. But oftentimes what happens is when I'm meeting with them and I'm saying, okay, they want to know, what are your auditing procedures? That's not something that I can just pull out of thin air. I have to know, I can convey it in a way that sounds awesome, but I have to know, okay, what is it that you do? And you're like, I don't know. I'm just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I think that data is key. And then I also think maybe kind of just, because I get it. Sometimes it's like, if you've never gone through the process, maybe you just don't know. But I also like to talk about the fact that when you do bring someone in, it is a partnership, right? So it's like, I can't know your organization better than you. And so it's kind of like, we have to work together and you have to give me the information that I need in order for me to be able to do, whatever it was that you brought me on to do. So it sounds like you're kind of saying something similar, which is like, how can you really create, like a stellar application if you don't, if they're not feeding you the information that you're needing, you're kind of like having a guess.
Right.
So anyway, Tiara, thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed. I feel like grants is like the topic that people love to discuss, just because people think that it is either the only source or the main source of funding for nonprofits. Again, like Instagram connected me to so many great people like in our industry, from those who are on the actually working in the nonprofits internally, and then people like us who serve the nonprofits. And it's really been a joy, to watch more of us educate in this space. And so thank you. Please share the best way to keep up with you and how people can find you.
No, this is all my pleasure. I have a free Facebook group that I teach a free class in once a month, and I always share things there. So if I ever teach a free class or anything, it's always in my Facebook group, which is called the Nonprofit Neighborhood. Otherwise, you will see me most active on Instagram, where I share tips daily, videos, all of those things, to be best educated on grant writing practices and just to get insight into all things nonprofits, which you can find me at Tiara Quiala Group.
Great. And I will include the actual @name in the description so that it's easier to find. Again, right. Thank you so much. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. And here's to serving more nonprofits.
Right. You have a great rest of your day as well.
You too. Bye.